Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Professor Labropoulos, for your generous introduction. I'm already carried away after this tremendous talk by my dear friend, John Jing. And I would like to thank the Confucius Institute and its director and its staff for giving me the opportunity to be here. And of course, along with Vasilis Labropoulos, Professor of the Kavafi Chair, Artemis Leondis, Professor Artemis Leondis as well. So my talk today is entitled In Her Own Voice, History, Memory, and Female Subjectivity in Greek Cinema. And I'd like to start with two quotes. The very first one comes from the seminal study by French theorist of feminism, Hélène Cixous, The Laughter of the Medusa, 1975. She says, "When I say woman, I'm speaking of woman in her inevitable struggle against conventional man, and of universal woman subject who must bring women to their senses and their meaning in history." The second quote, which comes from the work The Mysterious Illness, a work that seems to be an offspring of Cixous' feminine writing that happened in 1985 by the Greek filmmaker Frieda Liappa, which reads as follows: "What is male? What's female? And what's the in-between?" In Greek, it is τι είναι τ' αρσενικό, τι θηλυκό και τι τ' ανάμεσό τους. This couplet, echoing and reversing George Seferis's couplet, "What's God, what's no God, and what's the in-between," from his poem Eleni, brings to the fore a similar quest for meaning and sums up the core issue of the cinematic vision of the three pioneering Greek women filmmakers whom I chose to examine today: Tonia Marketaki, born 1942, died 1994; Frieda Liappa, born 1948 and died 1994; and Loukia Rikaki, born 1961, died 2011. The relationship between male and female, as manifested primarily in the form of heterosexual eros love and its loss from the woman's perspective, lies at the heart of all the films that we will examine today, starting from Marketakis' The Price of Love, Η τιμή της αγάπης, 1984, and Crystal Nights, Κρυστάλλινες νύχτες, 1992. Liappa's Love Wanders in the Night, or it is also translated as The Ways of Love Are Nocturnal, 1981, and The Years of the Big Hit, 1991, and Rikaki's Hold Me, 2006. Love, that incomprehensible, irrational force appearing at times as panic or as a mysterious contagious virus that shatters everything in its passage, and at times as a force of redemption or liberation, is magnified in all these films to the extent that it evolves to a major historic event that defines female subjectivity. Love of a man and its subsequent loss, presented as the personal drama of ordinary women, conditioned by the larger circumstances, becomes the catalyst by means of which women's consciousness arises and the female self is gradually formed and unfolds in the eyes of the spectators, who are then in a position to see not only how women experience history, but also how they perceive the personal, social, and political meaning of being female. Drawing on Cixous' notion of the grounded on the body écriture féminine, feminine writing, which introduced this talk, will show how these three Greek women film directors paradoxically defy a male-dominated culture, all the while defining woman in her heterosexual relation to man. Thus, the cinematic universes of Marketaki, Liappa, and Rikaki focus on the major event of a woman's love of a man. Whether set up against history, as in the case of Tonia Marketaki's historic films, or encompassing history, seen as constantly moving process of interpretation, as in the case of Frieda Liappa's films, or transcending history, as in the case of Loukia Rikaki, love is the major constant amidst the fluid variables of memory and time. In the following section of this talk, I will analyze each case separately, supporting my analysis with a variety of film clips. I will start with the oldest and pure filmmaker, Tonia Marketaki. I will proceed with the poet-filmmaker, Frieda Liappa, and I will close with the youngest, Loukia Rikaki, who was also a theater director and poet and the person who introduced crowdfunding in the Greek cinema. I have also passed a handout, I hope you have it, with some basic biographical information for each one of the three filmmakers. And whenever relevant, I will also use some elements from their biographies. So starting now with Love Against History in Tonia Marketakis' films. Both films, The Price of Love, 1984, and Crystal Nights, 1992, by Tonia Marketaki, tell their tragic stories against the backdrop of overwhelming history. The first, The Price of Love, is based on the homonymous naturalistic novella by Yorgos Theotokis. It is set up on the island of Corfu in the beginning of the century. In the historical and social context of the place and the time, it is a story of love betrayed for money. Rini, a woman of humble origin, is abandoned by her lover Andreas, who belongs to the bourgeoisie, and who dares to stand in his class and marry a girl without dowry. Still unmarried because her tough mother and breadwinner of the house refuses to give the 600 quid she had promised to her future son-in-law, Rini gets pregnant and becomes marginalized by the society, as would happen in any single mother at this time. But the Industrial Revolution has already begun, and the young woman, through her new position as a factory worker, will find a way to survive and maintain her dignity and her belief that love should not have a price. Taking advantage of the double meaning of the Greek word timi, meaning at the same time price and honor, stressed in the song by popular singer Dimitra Galani, Marketaki stresses the revolt of the emerging female subject against the exchange system of the time that treated women as commodity. Thus, in the following video clip that we're going to soon watch, we will see Rini addressing Andreas as follows. I quote, "I don't want you anymore. I am a hard-working young woman. I will make it. I will move to Athens and I will bring up my child there. I don't want you." She takes charge of her own life and that of her future child, as her mother did for her own family, regardless of her misjudgment, leaving thus her lover speechless, who curses damned anathema tatalera, damned money. As her mother also did just before being arrested for having attacked Andreas with a knife because he had threatened her that he would abandon her daughter since she had not given him the 600 quid that were needed to avoid eviction from his house. So that is the first video clip. I'm sorry for the subtitles missing, but it's the story which I just... What's the sound? And how do you do it? Make it a big screen. The big screen. What, a big screen?
No big screen.
Okay.
Δυστυχισμένη η νοικοκυρά αναμετρούσε με θλίψη τα αποτελέσματα. Η κοπέλα της παρατημένη, η ίδια στη φυλακή, τα παιδιά της σαν ορφανά στα χέρια τα δίνα του ταντρός της.
Now she gives the money, but it's too late. Sunday I'm getting married.
Να διαλύστε τον ονόμαστε, θα δίνει όλο σας. Δεν θα πάρω προτασίες που χρειάζονται. Να το κλινικό μου, είπε να πάρω σας. Γιατί κλαις δεν είναι. Πάει τελείωσε τα βάσανα. Η μάνα σου με βάρεσε, μα δεν κρατάει. Είναι άλλη Κυριακή σου βάζω σε φάνη.
No more worries, he says.
Έφταξα. Μα τώρα θα διορθώσω. Την άλλη Κυριακή ξεπανώ. Γιατί κλαις.
Δεν ξέρω να πω πια, Ανδρέα. Δεν σε θέλω, άντρα μου. Δεν θέλω να κάνω τέτοιον άντρα.
Ξέρεις τι χύψε. Και αυτή να μην τα δω και τα ξέχασα. Και εγώ έτσι το.
Δεν έχω ανάγκη κανένα. Δεν σε θέλω, Ανδρέα. Γιατί να μην φύγω τα αδερφή μου.
Δεν είσαι καθαρός. Κυριακή.
Δεν μπορώ να γεννήσω. Αχ, στην Αθήνα που δεν με ξέρετε. Θα δουλέψει στο εργοστάσιο και εμένα και το παιδί. Δουλεύτερα είναι. Δεν έχω ανάγκη κανένα. Δεν σε θέλω, Ανδρέα.
So now everyone has become a victim of a violent society that values money more than love, including her mother, an ambiguous character who has turned into a greedy and vengeful person due to her constant fight against a traditional male-dominated society. In that society, finally, only Rini painfully rises as a speaking subject, as you saw, when she abandons her traditional role of a woman subjected to the needs of a patriarchal society. Here, Marketaki activates the anti-logos weapon, in the words of Sixus, and interestingly, through her soon-to-be mother female character. She writes in white ink, alluding to her milk, something that empowers her as speaking subject. While in The Price of Love, the woman rejects her love, in Crystal Knights, 1992, Marketaki shows a woman fighting to the extreme in order to keep her love prohibited by historic conditions. Far from the historic realism of The Price of Love, Crystal Knights is a mystical fantasy about serial reincarnation and supposed soulmates that employs memory-based flashback techniques brilliantly. It begins during the German occupation of Greece. A German woman, an officer's wife, with supernatural powers, falls for a young Jewish Greek iceman she believes to be her soulmate. And this is the second video clip that we're going to watch now. Can you come tomorrow at 5? I want to talk to you. Love at first sight. You can see the contrast between the eyes and the inner heat. The woman directly addresses here the young man by saying, I want to talk to you. Will you come? And he nods yes. Here again, we witness Marketakis' placement of her female protagonist in a position of a superb, equal, hence impossible subject that breaks the codes that negate her desire, as Sixus would say. And then things get complicated. Love becomes passion. Passion turns to dangerous absolutism for the lover's eternal possession. So when the lover marries someone else, she starts chasing him through time. She kills herself and is reborn as Anna, a Jewish girl, and then, if that doesn't work, she tries again as Mariana, apparently determined not to stop until his reincarnated soul is here. Here we're going to see another video clip.
Väestön viesti. Miguel. Kirker. On äänikielisen.
Δεν τη βρίσκω. Δεν είναι εδώ.
Oops. So whatever I do to possess you is legitimate, she claims, even in countless lives. That's what Isabella claims. And then in another video clip we see, welcome Isabella to the cult of our God, the man says to the woman. The God, Hitler or Eros, is identical, the viewers chillingly realize. As film critic Yannis Bakuyanopoulos states, Marketaki follows a historical axis, the rise and fall of Nazis, the Holocaust, but more than that, she is interested in another interior axis, that of love, passion in all its psychological, mental, transcendental, and metaphysical connotations. For Marketaki, love has dimensions that forces literally cosmic. The love of this woman, identifying herself with the beloved man, is absolute possession, eros, creation, and attraction of the utterly opposites, love, power, love that extends to the magic and Satanism to set aside any obstacle of love, a love that is reincarnated through the body of another woman to continue forever. It is not impossible then that love take the form of fascism, extermination of the Jews, another kind of black magic in its own symbols and rituals. The following clip will clarify this point. I hope I have the right one.
Wenn unser Land sein tiefstes Dunkelheit packt, werden alle Bürger unseres Stammes auferstehen. Im Augenblick der tiefsten Dunkelheit kommt das Licht der Morgenröte. Das Hakenkreuz wird noch gesagt Feld ausbreiten. Der Führer wird im Moment der tiefsten Dunkelheit kommen. Ihr müsst vorbereitet sein. Nichts wird aus dem Nichts geboren. Nichts wird verloren. Was existiert, kommt wieder.
Sich jemand sein wie du, Isabella. Er wird das Charisma haben. Er wird am Tag deiner Hochzeit geboren und durch ihn wirst du die Bestimmung erfüllen, für die du geboren wurdest. Willkommen, Isabella.
What Marketaki achieves here is incredible. She warns about the danger of absolute love, but also brings to the fore the historic event of the Crystal Night or the Night of the Broken Glass, on November 9, 1938, that marked the beginning of the Holocaust. I have another video clip that testifies to what happened that night.
And 96 Jews who died on that night. Is this possible? In far-reaching research conducted by German-born Professor Mayer Schwartz, a very different picture emerges. About 1,550 synagogues were destroyed or burned, and some 2,500 Jews were murdered or committed suicide out of pure despair. Some 30,000 Jews were confined to concentration camps, and tens of thousands of apartments and shops were looted. Crystal night, background night.
What Marketaki here does is fighting bravely with her vast material by means of her tension, her devices, the remarkable maturity of her directorial practice, the allusion, the ritual, the creative use of the the contrast of black and white versus use of color and style that exceeds constantly realism towards poetic imagination. To recall Sixus again, women's imaginary is inexhaustible, like music, painting, writing. Their stream of phantasms is incredible. Overwhelming history is cunningly intertwined in this perpetual love created by Marketaki, who gives voice to the female subject in her constant battle with either society or unconquerable love. If fight against history is the right word to describe the way female subjectivity arises in Marketakis' films through love, then in Frieda Liappa's case, history encompasses everything, from politics to writing, music, film, and personal life, and is presented as a constant moving process of interpretation, finding its ultimate test in the form of love, a love that is manifested in the smallest gestures of the everyday. Like Tonia Marketaki, Frieda Liappa also bleeded matose, to use the words of her friends, in order to establish herself in the male-dominated film world, but also in her personal revolt against the colonel's dictatorship. It is worth seeing a few photos that are in your handout that document her struggle, her freedom during those years of her involvement in the student leftist organization Rigas, known for its resistance against the dictatorship that happened 67, 74. The first one is the Sunday Times, where we have 5 died before tanks quell turmoil in Athens, and she was there. And then the second picture is another from say deposit check book, where she had it during her imprisonment. The next one is another certificate from her imprisonment, and also another from the newspaper. So, and the last one is a scene where she acts as somebody who revolts against dictatorship for another movie, not Greek, and Irish. So in all these pictures, one witnesses the blending of the personal with the political in Liappa's case, and in the last picture especially, one sees how she enacts her own self on the big screen. This intertwining can be probably explained by her alignment with Edward Hallett Carr's view of history, as presented in his seminal work, What is History?, which Liappa, interestingly, has translated into Greek for the publishing house Planitis. In this seminal work, Carr tackles the most fundamental questions concerning the interpretation of human social experience. Seeing history as a constant moving process, he also sees the historian moving within it. Liappa, the filmmaker, deeply influenced by Carr's thought, becomes a Carrian historian who is interested in interpreting her characters' human drama, especially when it comes to her female characters. I quote her: "Your narration may take the form of a fairy tale, a song of only a sound. Myriads are the ways that exist, but underneath there will always be what gives power to all the great movies that have survived until today. That is the human drama. So in my case, what interests me is the truth of a situation and not its verisimilitude, the fate of a person and not its beautification, the clash of forces that operate within a case and not its representation. In short, I am interested in the stories that for years now our people narrates, but also in the history hidden in a way a man holds his glass." So this history hidden in the most ordinary gestures is most revealing, as Liappa interprets it and tries to magnify it through the camera by offering her viewers some incomparably poetic moving frames paintings, prompting them to interpret every single gesture of her characters, especially the female ones. Hence her obsessive use of close-ups that magnify these face expressions and gestures, like for instance in this video clip.
Thank
βασιλέα τελευταία. Έτσι έμαθα τα όσα. Από φυλακή σε φυλακή και από εξορία σε εξορία. Τότε δεν μας επιτρέπαν τα βιβλία. Εμείς όμως τα βάζαμε κρυφά. Όταν βγήκα, συνέχισα με τον κόσμο. Είχα κρατήσει όσα βιβλία και τετράδια μπόρεσα. Τα όσοι θα μας χρειαστούν μια μέρα. Αν δεν ξέρουμε εμείς τα όσοι, τι θα κρατήσουν τις διπλωματικές και εμπορικές σχέσεις με τα σοσιαλιστικά κράτη.
Here, the bouzouki sound, through the gestures and confessions of the protagonist in a taverna, the entire post-Civil War Greek history intrudes from a leftist perspective who stresses the potential usefulness of the Russian language and the way he learned this language from exile to exile, including Leros. According to her partner and film director Kyriakos Angelakos, Frieda Liappa had her own way, a poetic perspective on realism, but not through an idealization of poeticity and all that stuff. Even what others would consider popular, she was able to get it and turn it into a poetic event. In 1976, for instance, she borrowed the title of a popular song by Mitropanos, the All My Life I Remember You Living, on which others looked down, and she created a film out of it in which she put all the elements of her personal mythology presented in a totally new way. It was the film that we watched the clip for. She included Tsitsanis, the Greek popular song composer, and also Raymond Chandler, the American novel, her relation with the left ideology, the male-female relationship, having the man leaving and returning after an adventure, the creator's deadlock, the theater through the lenses of director Michailidis and the staging of Medea. At the same time, she focuses on the lifestyle of a particular generation and not of a band of friends or at a specific timeline, that of the political changeover, while keeping, of course, an open finale. She always liked not to close her movies and instead leave the end open, end of quote. In the following example from the 1980s short film Apetaxamin, Refused, which means or I threw away, or I became free, I denied, I refused. We watched Loukia, a teenager high school student currently staying at her cousin's house in Athens and studying history for her school exam. Unlike her cousin, she's timid and quite stressed. She has to learn by heart the historical facts in all their details of the horrible events of the Greek War of Independence in 1827, while the need for love of a teenager are more pressing, as the sirens in the end painfully stress and will sound again at the end of the film, when Loukia's corpse will float on the bathroom after committing suicide and writing her own history, similar to another event that was featuring on the headlines of the journal that was lying next to her bed at the beginning of our clip, giving thus a new tragic meaning on the title of the film. I will show you this very interesting look at historicity.
Η νέα σύγκρουση έγινε στις 8 Οκτωβρίου του 1827. Οι Μαριανανοί με 1424 πυροβόλα, με 2240 πυροβόλα. Προλογίζουμε ότι σκοτώθηκαν με σκοτώθηκαν 6.000 Τουρκοαιγύπτιοι και από τους συμμάχους 650 άνδρες.
Borrowed from the Greek Orthodox ritual of the mystery of baptism, apetaxamin, where the godmother has to deny Satan and thus free himself or herself from any sin in order to be eligible for the mystery, the title apetaxamin takes on a new meaning for tragic Loukia, who enacts another disturbing baptism in which she is both the godmother and the baptized one, as she commits suicide and frees herself from any burden, sin, or absent or impossible love like another Ophelia. Indeed, as we read in the Greek Film Archive's website, Frieda Liappa is, in this short film, casts an alternative gaze on the notion of historicity. Between the lines of Loukia's book and the historical events sprang up in a multidimensional way for the viewers of Frieda Liappa. Liappa transverses the dimensions of the real, the imaginary, and the symbolic. She invites the viewer to consider the construction of the film as well as the historical text. She succeeds in making a film with an open end and to leave room for our own contingent constructions. 1 year later, in 1981, the theme of suicide and impossible love reappears in Liappa's film Love Wanders in the Night, or The Ways of Love Are Nocturnal, where she dives into deep psychoanalytical terrain, having as her starting point an article in the newspaper about the double suicide of two sisters in the 30s, the Papin sisters. Like the Papin sisters, who are the primary examples for Lacan in his theory of paranoid psychosis, the Greek Film Archive states as follows: the sisters in the film are bonded with pathological love to the point of ultimate identification. In urbanizing Athens of the early 80s, they live cut off from the past. The cousin from Paris visits them, and a chain of events breaks their Liappa with a poetic but also very realistic way, manages to move on the borders of blind desire and cruel reality. In Love Wanders in the Night, Irene and Stella are two old maids and sisters who have grown up in the provinces and now live in Athens in an apartment that looks out onto an open-air cinema. They are almost 40, still virgins and dependent on each other. Their only relative is their cousin Stephanos, with whom they were both in love, but who has been away in Paris for years. He is an artist. When he comes back and visits them, the balance between the two women is upset. Stephanos persuades Irene to live with him, and Stella, who often has hysterics, is driven to suicide. Let's watch that excerpt to better grasp it. Oh, okay, it's another one. Sorry, stop. We saw this one. This one. The ending of the film. It is a low-tone tragedy, as film critic Achilleas Kyriakidis states. The light, half light or no light defines the film. This anxiety of interpreting things reaches the extreme in the film, which has a lot to tell us about another possibility of what lies in between a male and a female, opening up other options for gender and sexuality in feminist theory revisited today. Equally fruitful would be an attempt to revisit Liappas' last film, The Years of the Big Hit, 1991, a reworking of the myth of Electra. Here, the remote island hotel run by the solitary Electra and her elderly godfather plays host once again to an Australian cousin, the peripatetic ex-painter Stephanos, and his wife, among others, who are all, as one says, clumsy at being happy. The state radio explains the continuing heat wave may result in loss of memory and disorientation, an effect compounded by the arrival of the mysterious Pavlos. Frieda Liappa's film continues her fascination with the reconfiguration of melodrama as a way to elucidate the darker realms of men's and especially women's hearts and minds, and to describe the often murky import of family and social history. We'll see the